Welcome, everyone, to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin, and I'm here with Coach Katie. And this is episode 108. And we're actually going to do something a little bit different today. We don't have really any structured notes. We don't have an outline. We don't have anything where we're trying to take this discussion in a particular direction, because the topic for today is, when is it appropriate to follow a plan versus to come off the plan and play things by ear, have a little bit of freedom in the training, maybe make that switch to training versus exercise, which we've talked about before, and just kind of like go back to maybe doing things that you had to sacrifice when you were on a specific training plan. If you like group classes and that's something that you had to sacrifice in order to follow something that was structured to prepare for a particular race or event, because you are training for performance, when is it a great time to just come off that plan, throw those things back in there, have some enjoyment and just some exercise and some non-structure, so that when it comes time to follow another plan, you don't feel like you're just going from plan to plan. Because sometimes that can just either get boring or just downright overwhelming, and just kind of, you just burn out. And so I think it's nice to have some of these periods of time where we relax our expectations, we relax our goals, and we just kind of get back to some basics and just have fun within your training or within your exercise. So that's why we don't have any structure, because it fits the title and topic that we want to talk about. And so we're just going to kick this thing off. So Katie, what are your thoughts on when do you like to follow a plan versus when do you like to kind of come off and have a little bit of freedom? And then when you kind of share your insights, maybe I'll come in and talk about when I like to do that, either for me or for my athletes. So yeah, you take it away. Go for it.
I think so. I'm kind of thinking over the last year, because there were some times I was following a plan and then times I wasn't following like a strict plan. I kind of always like to have some idea of what I'm going to do. So because I am a planner, like innate, my natural instinct is to plan things. I like to have things on the calendar and planned out in my calendar, at least some idea of, at least even blocking just some time off to exercise, if anything. So I have to do some level of planning no matter what. But let's just kind of say for me, it would be something that was like highly structured. Every single workout is structured in Training Peaks versus just some sort of outline of what I might do, or just even blocking off time in my schedule so I make sure I do something, sort of that sort of nature. So it's very structured, very planned out deliberately versus kind of up in the air. I decide on the day, but I'm making sure I have it blocked off so I actually do something. So I guess like when we're talking about planning, it might be the level of which like someone might consider something planned may differ from each individual. But for me, when I'm looking at a plan, an actually structured plan, it's usually when I'm training for like that goal race, that A race, like the marathon for me just recently. So back in March is when I started. And that's really when like I had spent hours, probably hours, I would say, or quite a bit of time like sitting down and putting at least some of my key workouts into Training Peaks. I know it's always sort of put in as in pencil, but I actually sat down and really thought about it and had it planned out sort of the way I wanted it to go, and some of my long runs and things like that for the full, March, April, May into June. So 3-ish months, to the race. So that was all really well planned out. But prior to that, before I sort of had that structured plan, I was running, but there wasn't like structured workouts, generally. It was just kind of like just trying to get in the mileage, right? So there's a lot less planning. There's a lot less, like maybe in Training Peaks, it's kind of like, okay, I'm just roughly putting in each week, like even week by week, kind of what I maybe want to do, but there's not it's not planned out for several months in advance. So that's kind of the way I'm viewing this. This is how I'm interpreting it for myself. For other people, it
Mhm.
may be just like having no plan at all and you just do whatever you feel like and you don't even put anything in the calendar. And I'm just not that kind of person. So and I guess
Yeah.
I always have something. Even now, like I finished my marathon and I took a week off. And last week was kind of the like I had no real plan that like that might last like a week or two for me where I just kind of let myself do whatever I want. I might put something in there, but it can change. It has 2 or 3 times this week I've decided I don't want to do something or I didn't feel like up for it yet. So I just let myself do or there was a strength workout I had changed a little bit because I just wasn't feeling up for it. And I'm like trying to let myself recover and I put so much pressure on myself to do workouts when I'm following a plan that I do like this time when I can kind of be like, I just don't feel like it. I'm gonna let this one go, or I'm gonna do a little bit less, or I'm just gonna try to do something and not let
Yeah.
myself do nothing, but I'm just gonna do something and it doesn't matter what it is. I just need to move, right? So I'll probably do that this week and then or I did that this last week and then I start to I'm running a mile race in August. So I'll start to kind of come up with a little bit of an outline for how I would like to train for that and start putting in strength training. But really because it's not a race that I am it's just like a fun race. It's just trying to get in some speed. I'm trying to work on speed. Like it is all sort of in like I have an outline in Training Peaks of some of the things workouts I want to do and stuff like that. But it's like I don't have a plan. I don't know. It's planned, but it's not. Every week I could change my mind. I could decide I want to do
Yeah.
something different or I want to throw something in, and that's a fun thing. I don't do CrossFit right now, but I could when I sign up again, maybe in August when I'm ready gearing up for my high rocks, I might jump in and do a workout because it looks fun. Or, I might go and do a group run when I normally wouldn't do that. So there's things that I'll probably add in that I wasn't doing before because it wasn't part of my plan. But now it's like, oh, there's a track workout they're doing on Tuesday. I'm just going to go because I want to go run with someone. And really, it's not really the type of workout I would maybe normally do, but I wanna go run with someone, So it's
Mhm.
it's kind of nice because it's more open-ended. There's not like this like, well, this is the workout I have to follow and I can't really deviate. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then I think when High Rock starts, I'll plan it out a lot more, a little bit more just because I will want to start sort of specifically training for that. And then once that's over, again, I go through another period of through the winter, sort of a little bit less structure and just doing kind of what I think is fun, just running, because I enjoy it. And then sometime next year, I might gear up again, So I go through waves periods, but I've always have something in my calendar. I always block off time and want to at least do something to keep my fitness up. So I don't know about you. Like, how are you interpreting plan versus no plan? Because I think this could be different for different people. Like I said, like
Yeah.
how do you
You
do it?
you've seen my Training Peaks, so
Yeah,
you you know that there's always a plan.
yeah, I
Um,
do. I have.
yeah, so I think what I tend to do, and this is just for myself as an athlete, not as a coach, um, I will kind of relax some of the structure on particular activities. So let's say that I might get a little bit more lenient with my run training and not necessarily kind of like, pushing for performance, but just trying to keep up volume, just trying to keep that base rather than trying to progress it. So I'm trying to hold on to some kind of fitness level. And one of the things that I did was I loved it that I bought the gravel bike over a year ago now because it does allow me to introduce a different style of riding. And so when I was training for the triathlons this year, I put the gravel bike away and was solely dedicated to the road bike. And once the triathlons were over, or once I perceived that they were over, I was able to, put the road bike on the trainer more often and just kind of like leave it there. But I do like a group ride on Thursdays with the Tri Club. And so I broke out the gravel bike. And so, like, a lot of my longer stuff is on that bike now. And it's a nice change of pace. It's a nice change in muscle engagement and position and posture and just enjoyment level. So, it's a change of scenery. I'm now more on some trails, which is a lot different than just riding on the road or even on, bike paths or multi-use paths. So that's some of the things that I will tend to do to just maintain some fitness, but just change it up a little bit. I'll change up my strength workouts and get away from a particular approach and implement a new method and change up some movements. So really, there's never a time where there isn't a plan, I think,
Right.
but the purpose behind the plan changes, and
Y
that's just how I operate.
Yeah, I
As an
think
individual, I
yeah.
don't I would not function well as an athlete where there was nothing on the calendar or it said like athlete choice and you just kind of do whatever you want to do that day. I don't operate very well under those conditions. But I work with athletes who do, and they really like that level of freedom. So, I've been working with one athlete for years now, and there's some things that are going on, and so he wanted to have more freedom and less structure so that I knew that he was going to do something whenever he could, but he didn't want to feel the pressure to say, oh, I have to do this workout. So I give him the freedom to move things around within guardrails, of course, but there's very little structure. It's
Mhm.
just like, okay, I have a couple runs in there. I have strength workouts. And I was just like, dude, I know you're going to do whatever it is that you can do with travel and whatever is going on, but I'm here. I'm setting up the guardrails for you so you know how far to go and how far not to go. And then I just manage it that way until he gets to a point where he feels comfortable. It's like, okay, now I can commit to training. Now he just wants to be active and kind of maybe just get stronger with the focus of the weight room, but there's no like structured performance driven training plan. And it seems to be working well for him. So, but I know that there's going to come a time where he wants to make that switch. And
Right.
so, a lot of times when we have to make these adjustments, we either have to make them out of something that we don't control. So, something in your life has changed and you need that level of freedom now. And he's been doing this for a really long time. So, I know that he loves to stay active and he knows what to do and what not to do. And I'm just kind of there, just kind of like guiding him a little bit rather than
Mhm.
directing him. And a lot of times when I have athletes that are done with a particular race, then I kind of loosen the reins a little bit and just say, okay, now there's the pressure's off. Our race is done. We don't really have anything on the calendar. So now let's just kind of loosely go and still stay active, but we're kind of loosely moving forward. This is going to be an open cardio workout. So I leave you the option on what, this is an hour and a half worth of cardio. You can either go for an hour and a half hike, you can go for an hour and a half bike ride, whatever it is that you want to do. I don't want you going out for an hour and a half run because that's going to push you beyond a limit to where you're not at. So that's the kind of guardrails that I'll set up for somebody. But I give them the freedom to choose when there's kind of nothing going on.
Mhm.
But what we do is, I think what's important is to set a time limit to those scenarios. I say, our race is done, so let's take 2 months of some casual training. Let's try and hold on to some fitness. And if you want to work on something in particular, you need to tell me what it is that you want to work on. I'm not going to set the plan to work to get you from one place to another. I want you to communicate with me. It's like, okay, now I'm ready. I want to do this, but I still want to keep some level of freedom. Then I know that there's some piece of the puzzle that I need to structure. But keep setting a limit to it will keep you from allowing that to prolong until you get to a point where now you're starting to lose ground rather than just maintaining fitness, because you can maintain fitness for a while. It's not
Mhm.
something that you can do perpetually. So I think that that's important when it comes to managing current fitness and not allowing yourself to kind of settle into that. So I'm kind of curious on what your thoughts are on whether you like the idea or whether you do that as well, where you say, I'm going to allow myself 2 months of freedom to kind of do what I want, or do something with a little bit less structure, but once that time period is up, I want to do some kind of structure. It doesn't have to all be structured, but some kind of structure. Um, what do you see with that?
No, I mean, I feel like that's a good idea to have some amount of time where there's no structure. I mean, I had like, and you mentioned your athlete that you have, and I have one that's kind of similar. I put the workouts in there for her for the running workouts, but she's also sort of training similar to what I'm doing. She's doing like a high rocks and she's do like a high rocks race and she's trying to train for like 5K, 10K. So I'm doing the run workouts and then she has those high rocks workouts she does at a gym kind of locally. So it's 2 days a week. So she kind of moves, like there's some parameters I've given her to I don't want, 2 really hard days generally back to back, and I'm trying to fit in, like, a longer not a
Mm,
long run, but, like, a longish run, and, there's a couple things we're trying to work on, so it's hard because with those 2 other workouts in there, it gets a little challenging, but,
yeah,
she moves things around a little bit if she feels like she needs to, so I get there is a little bit of that freedom of, like, okay, just make sure you don't, like, load up several hard days in a row and
yeah,
you have one rest day, you can kind of put it where you think it's appropriate. So there's, yeah, kind of guardrails, like you're saying. And that's just like this particular athlete, she has goals, but she also has like, she travels sometimes and has like a busy work schedule. So, um, it's like the plan isn't, it's a looser, but she's still training for something. She's not like extremely serious. She does it mostly because she enjoys it. But, I think that's okay too. And whether you call that a plan or not a plan, I mean, it gets kind of like a gray area sometimes of like, well, it's still something's in there in plan. So, I was thinking when you were mentioning your athlete kind of that. And I think, um, you know, when when I'm working with someone, it's really just trying to figure out what level of plan they want. Like, how do they want it to be something where, or do they need it to be something where there's boundaries or you're setting parameters, but they're able to move things around if they need to, or are they someone that like has to have it? They want it all planned out to the T and they're going to follow it, day by, each day. And they're not likely to like move things around, so I'll work with people in both of those situations, and one maybe isn't necessarily it was still a plan, right?
hmm
So
yeah,
I guess, when but then to have like the scenario you're talking about where it's like kind of open ended, I do think that's helpful, but I still think that like you said, without something there, without guardrails set of some sort, people can easily s- just lose a lot of fitness because I think it's like, oh, well, I have 2 months to kinda do whatever I want, and, unless you're highly motivated to do some sort of fitness, like go hiking or biking and doing strength training, to kind of have it be totally up in the air without any parameters, I think for many people could be pretty risky because
yeah,
there might be, like, days and days that they don't train, because you're kinda, like, not having anything in
hmm
there to sort of help you figure out what you need to do. I just think for me, like, I'm kinda like you, like, I personally need to have some sort of plan in there because, I think without it, if I'm just set to do whatever I want, like, I I'm motivated and I wanna be fit, but I'm also, like, not it's hard for me to just do whatever I want,
right,
Like, get up in the morning and be like, "What am I gonna do today?" Like, I could get to the end of the day and be like, "Oh, I haven't done anything," right? I haven't even done any
yeah.
training,
That's the
so
risk.
that's the risk, yeah, so I think it can be good in certain instances to have no plan for a little while. I think 2 months of no plan at all would be, I think, a little too long. I mean, for me, the no plan is really the week or 2 after a big race, right? I give myself
Yeah,
that
great.
freedom,
Mm,
but then I have some sort of something in there. Like, if you look at my training peaks now, I put for the next month until that 1 mile race, I kind of put an outline of what I want to do and what workouts I might want to do to kind of prep for that. Um, because I like to have that in there. Like, okay, I want to have some speed. I want to work on my strength. So I need to put those in there. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to do easy runs every day, 30-minute easy runs every day. And I'm never, if I'm just left to my own devices, I'll just kind of willy nilly do what I feel like and maybe that'll keep my fitness, but I'm surely not going to get, I don't know, any faster. So I think from my perspective, I think no plan at all, like zero plan, like nothing at all should be pretty limited, right? Like
Yeah,
maybe a couple
I
weeks
can't
after
do it.
your race. And then you should have some idea. Like you're saying, like, okay, you have an hour, I want you to do cardio, or and you can pick whatever you want, or you need to do strength, or someone like wants to add in like CrossFit or something, like, okay, 3 classes a week limit, like, and you pick the
Yeah.
days, and then, um, or something like that, but some sort of idea, and still that's has some level of a plan, right? So, but it's just a little more loose and still structured, but less specific, I suppose. So that's
Yeah,
my
I think
goal, kind
the
of
way
thing.
that I like to think about it is that I will turn control over to the athlete, but not 100% control. And so it allows them, I think, to feel like they do have some kind of say and they're in charge. I mean, ultimately, the athletes that we work with, they do have a say. They can either
Right,
do the
yeah.
workouts that we give them or they not do it. And they're the ones that are setting the goals. We're just trying to help them blaze that path forward to set them up as best as we can to accomplish those goals. But I think that there tends to be a semblance of I don't want to say like a power struggle, but sometimes there are periods where, me as a coach, I have to sit them down and say, look, I know that you like to do this. But if you trust me now. And I like to do that with the strength side, because I have one athlete that I work with, love working with her, and she's got these strength workouts that she likes to do, but she likes to pick them, and her primary focus is she's trying to build up her run base. So she's a single sport athlete, and there's very few races that she does a year. And so when we're not actively training for a particular race, I will say, here are the runs that I kind of want you to do. And sometimes I'll throw in some structures like, okay, this is some intensity. And, like for instance, I'm giving her some functional strength runs right now just to mix things up. And then I'll do that for a couple weeks. And then I'll switch over to more of a pace based, where we're trying to work on like increasing leg turnover. But I'm trying to make the workouts fun, and I'm changing them up so that it doesn't feel like you're constantly focusing on one particular skill like all the time. But now is a great time where I say, now I've turned over the control over what you do for strength. So if you want to do, I want you to do 2 strength workouts a week. These are resistance based, like weight training kind of workouts, but you can pick them. You do whatever it is that you want to do, whatever you have fun doing. But then there's going to come a time within the training plan, and I was like, look, I know that you really like to do these, but I want to give you some specificity in your training plan to where I want to develop particular muscle groups that I know are going to be important in getting you where it is that you want to go. So trust me, if you're willing to sacrifice that level of so-called quote unquote freedom, then I think it's going to be a worthwhile investment. And then I'll take over and I'll program the strength stuff for her, and she'll do those for however long it takes. And then I was like, okay, now it's done. Now you can go forward and just pick whatever strength stuff that you want. That's over with now. And so it kind of gives them a break, and it kind of gets them to feel like, okay, now I have some kind of say and control over what it is that I get to do with this particular aspect of my training plan. But I like to do that just so that they don't feel like they're constantly engaged, like they're constantly like focused. I think it kind of relieves some of the pressures of following a plan, because I can understand that to a certain extent, because when I was a coached athlete, there is always some level of pressure to perform for your coach and to follow the plan that they set forth. I know that the way that I looked at it is like, man, I wanted to, execute his workouts because I felt like, he put a lot of thought. Why, I assume he had a lot of
Yeah.
thought into the workouts that he was giving me, and there's a purpose behind it. So I don't want him to feel like he's wasting his time on me. So I'm going to execute what it is that he has for me. So I feel that sometimes the longer those stretches go, the more it can kind of feel like you're just kind of weighted down a little bit. And it's just that pressure just kind of builds and builds and builds. And sometimes it's nice to just relieve that pressure a little bit and say, okay, now, you know, you're at a point now where I think that you can take charge of this. I'm just going to be here to watch you and protect you to a certain extent. And these are the guardrails that I've set up. So you can go this far, but I don't want you going beyond this. I like that you brought up the fact that the sequencing of the workouts, like I don't want you doing too hard workouts back to back. And that's a conversation that I always have with people that I implement this style of training, this block of training. I'll call it a block because a block implies that there is a start and end date to it. And it's like, okay, for this block, this is how we're going to approach this. But, I'm giving you the freedom to move things around, but these are the guardrails. I don't want you doing, two runs back to back for some of my newer athletes because I don't want them running on consecutive days. Or I don't want you to do like 2 hard runs where you do like a speed session and then the very next day you do some kind of like functional strength work on the treadmill or go run hills. I don't want us doing that. Let's put a day in between those so you can move them around, but these are the parameters in which you can move them around. During a training plan, like a specified training plan, what I do is I lock my athletes' workouts. And so I'll go into Training Peaks and there's an option to lock them so that they can't move things around and delete things so that we have to have that conversation. I know it probably comes across as like, oh, this guy's just a control freak, but I do it for a particular reason because I think that there's a time and place for the athlete to move things around, but then there's a time and place for me to set the sequence because I'm the one that has the understanding on why we're doing it this way. And it doesn't mean that they can't come to me and say, hey, I've got a scheduling conflict and it's last minute. I didn't know about this. Can we move things around? I'm like, absolutely. But I want to be the one that does it because, I want to make sure that whatever the new sequence is fits within the parameters of what we're trying to accomplish, given the limitations and parameters that I'm working with for that particular athlete. And so I'll be the one that moves those around for them. And because sometimes what you'll get is you'll have an athlete who will miss a run and then they want to move it. And so now they run the risk of moving it to a spot where now it's going to jeopardize the next day's run because maybe they're running short on days of the week and it's like we're approaching the end of the week. So there's not a whole lot of freedom to move things around. You're just kind of stuck. But then I have to have that conversation. It's like, okay, can we move this? Yes or no. And I have to make that decision. Or do I just say, normally we would move this. If it happened earlier in the week, we might have had a little bit more freedom to move things around. But this is now a missed session. It's not going to derail your plan. We're still going to be able to move forward. But this was just a missed opportunity. Life happens. It's going to happen. And it's no big deal. We're just going to move forward with that. But we're not going to try and make this session up. So I don't know. That tends to be how I function with my athletes.
Yeah, I
when
mean,
it
that makes
comes
sense, I
to
think,
managing a
for
plan.
yeah, for when they're in the plan, because you're right. I think it's just, if the freedom is there, then I think some people, like you're saying, may move it and tire themselves out because they're trying to do too much, and then, you've thought it through. I mean, usually when I'm creating a training plan that's well thought out for like a race, there's specific days I'm sort of throughout the week, I'm sort of looking at the training load and kind of what the athlete's doing and making sure there is enough balance or some balance between what they're doing and then the recovery, and making sure that with strength or something, I'm not having them do like a heavy leg session right before like a really key workout, the day before. And if they're moving it around, they're going to
Mhm.
maybe like mess up or either get injured maybe, or like kind of mess up what I've structured for them, kind of thinking it out like that. Like, like, okay, this, I have it very specifically set for some sort of reason. I didn't realize you could lock it. So I'll have to check that
Yeah.
feature out. But
Yep.
generally, I don't have athletes move it. Usually there is a conversation of, okay, like, I'm really trying to make sure I have their schedule, so there is a way to put they could put in their availability in there, which is really
Yep.
helpful in the Training Peaks, which, we both use that. I don't know for some of those other training plan creating apps, but, there's a way to put in, so I'll have them either do it in there or send me an email so that I know, so I'm, like, working around their schedule as best I
Hmm.
can. And obviously last minute things happen. And so I'm just hoping, generally people are communicating that with me. And that's kind of the expectation I set generally when I work with an athlete. And like I said, there are certain people that I give a little bit more freedom to versus, it just depends on the goal and the athlete too, and what they're, where they're at. And, um, like, some people I think are training and they're like, well, the one I'm thinking of, that I mentioned before, she's got goals, but I think she's really more fitness oriented, she's trying at least at this point. So if she's like comes to me and she's like, "Well, I really wanna do a marathon or something and I have a specific time," I think it changes a little bit. And it's
Yeah.
maybe more of a conversation of like, okay, well, we have to be a little more specific about what we're doing. But, for most of my athletes who come and say, I want to train for a marathon or a 10K or 5K or something, that's like that initial call I have with them. Generally, I'll do some sort of initial intake of
Hmm.
some sort. And a lot of times it might be like a Zoom call initially. Of some and asking some of these questions about their schedule and really trying to get that figured out and then some of those expectations set, in that very first call. Um, but yeah, I think I do have athletes who kind of go like have a training plan, they work with me, and then they want a little bit more freedom, so they kind of decide, "Okay, I'm gonna take a break." Like, "Oh, I wanna take a break from coaching." And I feel like those individuals, when they do come back to coaching, are generally struggle a little more because when they have been off a plan or they're just kind of set to
Yeah.
their own devices, they tend to lose fitness, and then they're sort of coming back like, "Oh, no, I've lost a significant amount of fitness," or, "I'm trying to train for this," and we're sort of starting at square one. So I do think, like, I think a lot of people think when they're working with a coach, like, "Oh, I'm done with my event. Um, I don't wanna have any structure, so and I don't really wanna continue paying for a coach." But I think those individuals, if you're unless you can kind of set your own training plan during that time or set some sort of plan for yourself where you're sort of structuring something, I think it's really easy for people to sort of get into that like I was talking about before. Well, what am I gonna do today? All right, I'm not and then weeks go by where maybe they've hardly done they've sort of done some willy-nilly, like, jumping into cycling class or going to a group run, but they're not really doing much, and I think that can get people into trouble. So I think if you're
Yep.
thinking about working with a coach, realize that the coach can help you with your training plan and your, for your race, but the coach the role of the coach can also be in the in between and helping you set those parameters and giving you the freedom but also giving you something so that you can continue with your fitness, because I do think one of the biggest things we've talked about in so many of our podcasts is just how important being consistent is
Yeah.
and having that consistency with training. And when you do take a significant amount of time off, you do lose fitness and then you're almost starting all over again with square one. So I do think there is a time and place for absolutely no plan, but like I said before, it's maybe 1 or 2 weeks. And then there's got to be some sort of something set there that you're going to do. That's some of my thoughts on that. I don't know. What your
Yeah.
thoughts?
I think if I had to come up with a list of times where I think it's reasonable to come off of a plan and just have more freedom, uh, I would say time periods where you're surrounding holidays,
Mm-hmm.
um, holidays that are heavy traffic holiday kind of things. So we're talking like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, those sorts of holidays is a good time to come off of a plan. Unless you're racing at that particular time of year, then so be it. But if you're not, then that's a great time to come off of the plan, it is a good time to stay active because with those holidays comes all kinds of parties and food gatherings and things like that. So the wheels can come off the bus really easily and
Mm.
quickly if you don't try and at least stay active so that you can enjoy the holidays with that level of freedom and still kind of enjoy the time of year. So I would say holidays is probably one. Second is going to be that time period right after a major race, assuming that you're not one of these that just races like every other week, and if we've worked with a coach and you've spaced it out and you've sought their advice on, hey, let's set a race schedule, and you've worked it out to where you've got some down periods in between events before the next plan kicks off, then that's a great time to turn over that freedom and just say, hey, you can just do whatever it is that you want. If you want to just, spend a whole week and just do an hour of hiking every single day, just to get on some soft trails and just enjoy being in the woods, and so be it. That's perfectly fine. So I think after a major event, that not only is there a physical deload, but there is a mental and emotional deload that you have to go through in order to
Mhm.
process, hey, how did my event go? What did I think worked well? What did not work well? And it's sometimes hard to evaluate those aspects of your performance while you're actively training for something else. You really kind of just need to just disconnect to a certain extent to allow your mind to process really how things went. And, I'm speaking from experience. If you're just jumping from plan to plan and you don't really give yourself that downtime, then I think that you kind of miss out on these little important knowledge nuggets and wisdom nuggets that you could have gotten from, a particular race on how it went, and you
Mhm.
just kind of miss it because you're so focused on the next thing that you kind of miss what just happened. And so I think that spending at least kind of like, depending on the race that you just did, spending a few days, just some nice easy movement stuff that allows your brain to kind of disconnect from training and be a little bit more introspective, and it helps you process kind of how things went. The third time that I think would be good to come off a plan is vacations. I run across this all the time with athletes where they're training for a race, but they've got a week long family vacation that's coming up, and they're so afraid that this vacation is going to derail their training. To me, it's going to depend on the athlete themselves, because sometimes I work with athletes where they love that time because now they have no pressures of work. They have more freedom, and let's say that they're early risers and the rest of the family is in there sleeping, they may actually enjoy the less pressure from having to do other things like, oh, I got to get my workout in because I have to log in for work at this time, or I have to be at work at this time. And it kind of relieves them so they can enjoy the training session a little bit more with less pressure. If that's the type of athlete that I'm working with, then that's great. We don't have to take a break. You just take whatever it is that you can or that you want to take. You're just like, I love riding the bike. Then take your bike on vacation. No trainer kind of stuff. Just get out and just ride, and we'll keep moving forward because they enjoy that aspect of their training. But if they have a situation where it's like, you know what, I've been working really, really hard, and now's a great time to just kind of connect with family because they're sacrificing just like the athlete is because you're training for an event, then that's going to be a great time to just say, look, I'm going to leave my stuff at home and I'm just going to reconnect with my loved ones and my family members, and I'm going to just deload myself. Then when you're back from vacation, we start back. We're not starting from square one again. You haven't lost anything. If anything, you've gained because your body has now rehabbed itself. You've recovered well. You're mentally rejuvenated. You've had time to connect with family and just have some nice memories, and then you get back to work.
Mhm.
I think that particular one is going to be subject to the type of personality that you have, the type of personality that the athlete has. So, but those are my three, I think, top
Yeah. Makes sense.
time periods where I think is great to come off the plan and not worry that it's going to somehow derail your progress and keep you from moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think too, having some Even if you're training for something, but,
Yep.
having a vacation situation, I mean, it may depend on where you're at in your training plan, but, just scheduling that as your down week. So you can fit those times in, I think, even into a structured plan where you have no plan. I think as long as it's not like 3 weeks like I took for my vacation, that would have been a little bit of a long period of time to have no plan. But if it's like we're going on a cruise for a week or something like that where it's like, oh, like that's going to be hard to like do a bike or to swim. Maybe there's a pool, but you have to
Yeah.
kind of like run around in circles on a track on the cruise ship. Like maybe do some of that, but let's not do anything super structured, just try to do some movement. Like I think that can be even within a training plan as long as it's sort of you're placing that week on vacation as like a no plan week, sort of, if that makes
Hmm.
sense, and that's your deload week. But yeah, I think you're right. I don't know if I would add anything to that other than maybe obviously if you have no plan, maybe if you're injured, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that might be a time. I mean, but then you kind of have a plan of how you're gonna like rehab, right? So maybe it becomes a different
Yeah.
plan. But there may be like certain other scenarios, but I don't think I can think of any other times where you would have no plan, maybe in certain life circumstances, like pregnancy or something maybe, but
Yep.
and those are like, different that's sort of like different scenario, but yeah, if you're kind of like entering a different life stage or something major has happened maybe. But yeah, I think I would agree with you there. And then I think every other point in time, you would maybe have a plan, but the level of which the plan is structured may vary a little bit.
Perfect. Yeah.
So, yeah, like, I don't think it's good if you're going one right into another. I think people do this, like, they're like, "I'm gonna run 2 or 3 marathons a year." Well, that leaves you, like, very little time to have no structure, right? Because let's say you have one in April or May, and then another one, in the fall, and then another one in December. I don't know, like, that's a lot of marathons. That'd be too
Yeah.
many for most people, but there's no time in there, and I think you're right, going from, like, one right to another, right to like, really having very little downtime in between. I think that is a recipe for burnout. I think allowing yourself that time to, decompress. That's why I only do generally 1 marathon a year. I mean, the past few years, I've only done 1 because it's just the level of dedication and things that I've had to sacrifice and give up to train every day and follow my plan because I have it so thought out, week to week. I'm kind of very much thinking about it and it's all and all the thought I put into it and all the other things I'm doing to support it. And it's just so much. If I'm thinking now, like if I had taken like maybe a little bit of time easy and then had to start running again, like within a week, and then had to start a new training plan because I was going to do Chicago or something like that, which would have meant I would have had to start training again right away. That would have been like, I don't think I'm ready for it. Right. I need some time to like decompress, to think about the race, to focus on something else that's not even the marathon for a while.
Yeah.
The thought of jumping into another marathon training plan is I just don't know if I could do it, but I don't know if I would be as passionate about it, because I would have
Yeah.
just came off of this other like, it's tempting sometimes. I think people are like, "Oh, I didn't have a good race," or, "Well, maybe they did have a good race," and they're like, "I wanna see if I can what I can do," or they've thought about it, and they're like, "This is what went wrong. I wanna try it again," I wanna jump in and, like, do it differently, and see what the outcome is. I mean, I had that go through my brain, and I'm like,
Hmm.
"No, like, just you need some time. Like, you can
Yeah.
think about that next year," but I think that's hard for people too because sometimes they're motivated, they wanna fix something they didn't do right, or they wanna have it go differently, and they wanna jump in again, and I think you really need to allow yourself at least a week or 2 with no plan
Yeah.
after a race, before jumping into something and having maybe then jumping into something a little less structured for a while before you then jump into another very structured plan. And I think that's probably the recipe I would give people for longevity in the sport. But yeah, I don't know if I mean, I think if you don't have a plan, in those scenarios, then every other scenario would be like you would have a plan, but the level of what you plan would change. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you were to look if the listener was to look at my training peaks, they would be like, "Dude, you've always got a plan. You never have like
Yeah.
a downtime even after events." And the so how I would respond to that would be, well, each athlete kind of downloads and processes things differently. So
Mhm.
I'll say that I like the way that you described it. It's like there's always a plan, but the specificity within the plan may be different and may be relaxed. And I think that that falls in line with how I approach my own personal training. I like having the plan. I like knowing what I'm doing from day to day. The specificity in that block of training maybe gets relaxed, or I get to focus on something that I know that there's a hole in my fitness, and so that's something that I say, well, I don't really have anything going on right now, but there's something that I can work on. And so I may focus on that for a little bit. But,
Mhm.
for instance, I'll say, hey, I'm going to go for a 2 hour gravel bike ride. Most people, I think many people would say, well, that's still 2 hours on the bike. But for me, it's 2 hours of alone time with my own thoughts and my own emotions, and I can sit there and I can process things and think through things. And that's just the environment in which I tend to I don't want to say perform best in, but I operate best in it. I don't really do well just kind of like sitting around or taking a class and say, "Oh, I'm going to process how this race went." I'd much rather just go for a bike ride and say, "Okay, now I'm kind of okay, I'm out here. This is great. I'm reconnecting. How did that race go? This is something that I could work on, or I think this one worked really well." So I think that I don't want people to think that, oh, we've got to block off that time where there's nothing on there because I need to process. You really have to determine on how it is that you process things efficiently and effectively, and go with that. So not everybody's downtime is going to look the same, which is why we don't do the same things for every single athlete. We, as a coach, we're coaching the athlete. We're not coaching the plan. And that's something that I like to reiterate to people. It's like you have these coaches that are out there that say, this is the training plan that's been tested and it's data driven kind of thing. And so this is proven to have performance results. But a lot of times I just say, you know what? But that's not going to work for everybody. So coach the athlete. Don't
Mhm.
just be dedicated to a particular method of training and approach because it works, because it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. And your athlete is paying you to coach them, not for you to coach them the same way that you coach somebody else.
Mhm.
So, if you're an athlete that's out there and you've gone onto social media and you're trying to get advice and insight from others, it's like, okay, my race is over. Now what do I do? Sometimes that can be uh, a little shady because I think everybody is so different that it's really hard to determine on what is the quote unquote optimal approach, because I don't think that there is one. I think that's what makes this sport so interesting, is that there's so many different ways to do it and approach it and still get the same results or similar
Right. Mhm.
results.
It's true.
And it allows you to be creative and dynamic and flowing to a certain extent. So that's one of the things that I just would highly encourage people to do, is that, sometimes you can feel free to come off of a plan, but it doesn't mean that you're not planning. So I
Right.
like the way that we've kind of described
Mhm.
this as like, okay, the specificity is, I think, what the key factor that you can
Right.
tweak in order to give you the results that you want. Do the results that I want may not be performance driven. The results that I want may be, I need a mental break.
Mhm.
And so the specificity of my plan is going to drop, but I still know what it is that I'm doing from day to day. To me, that's not a training plan. That's just structure,
Structure.
to
Yeah.
help you move forward.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's more of a something to keep your fitness. Yes, it's not like a structured plan, but
Yeah.
still a some sort of plan. I don't know. It's something.
I like to think about it in terms of like having a menu, because one of the things that I love working with
Mhm.
you is that there's you give me a menu. I know what it is that I'm going to be eating from day to day, because I know that if I don't have that plan, then things can come off the rails really, really quickly. Now it's just like, okay, now what am I going to have? Everybody's had this conversation. If you live with somebody else and you have a significant other, you're just like, what do you want for dinner? So, I mean, if you've ever had that conversation, that conversation will perpetuate until you wind up just having a bowl of cereal because you never
Yeah.
figured out what it is that you want. So I
I
think
mean, I
there's a
guess if you're using that analogy, like the plan I give, like you, for instance, is fairly structured because it's all in there, but there is a little bit of freedom probably with
yes, there
snacks or
is.
things. I mean, like when I'm working with someone and there might be like very structured plan, like this is what they're eating pretty much. I don't do that. I don't love that though, because there is no freedom, and with eating sometimes it's a little different than training, but versus like maybe another plan I might create is like, oh well, here's some ideas for meals, you can choose like these three meals or something like that, where it's like, and I'll do that in training peaks. Sometimes I'll say I have put it in there where I've had workouts that they could do, and they could kind of choose
Yeah.
your
Yep.
destiny, choose your option, and there's like three in there, and then maybe just so there's not a bunch of red, I might, like, go in and delete if they don't do it or something, but,
Uh-huh.
like, I have done that before where it's like, "Okay, there's 3 different things, I don't want you to do all 3," and maybe I put a note in there, there's something that I've mentioned to them, "But there are 3 options for you, 2 options," maybe 3 is too many, but choose what you want, like, do you wanna do the strength or the cardio, or do you wanna do a workout, or like, but there's, like, a few options, so maybe they choose one that they feel like doing, and so you're giving them some flexibility too. So it's similar in that way to a meal plan where it's maybe like here's just like the parameters of I want you to have protein, carbs, and healthy fat in this. Here are some examples. You kind of work with that and create something. So, it's something like similar in that sense. Whereas when someone's really dialed in on a goal, like maybe weight loss or performance, the structure of the meal plan may be very much more specific. So I guess you could use that analogy. So
Yeah, I like
yeah.
that you brought that up because it's like as when we were kids, you had these books. It was like a choose your own adventure book.
Hmm.
It's just like if you want the main character to do this next, go to this page and read and start reading from here, or you go to this way. And I like that kind of functionality within the training plan to where you
Yeah.
say, okay, here's two workouts that you can pick for this particular day. Pick one. And then in the very next day, I'll say, based on what you picked yesterday, these are the options that you now have available to you. So I still kind of keep those guardrails that are in place, but there's still some semblance of choice that's there.
Yeah.
I'm working on a plan right now for an athlete where I have that kind of functionality that's built into it, where there's one day within the training plan where there's like a group ride, or they can opt to do a more structured like trainer session, or because it gives them the option. It's like, well, if I can't attend the group ride, then I know that I do have something else that I
Uh,
can do, but they have that choice on what it is that they
Which
want to take on. Is there going to be any kind of specificity loss in their performance if they choose one or the other? I think it's very, very minimal.
Right.
um
'Cause sometimes those group
so
rides are, I mean, I guess you just never know what you're gonna get from my experience doing group rides. It's like
yeah.
you either have a chill ride or everybody wants to go fast and you just don't wanna
Yep.
be left behind. So like some of the group runs might be like that too, actually, but yeah, which is why it's hard to do when you have a very structured plan where you're trying to achieve something. But when it's flexible,
Yeah.
then if you do a group ride that's a little harder, then it's okay because maybe the next day you take it easier, but it's not gonna set, totally kind of not totally derail the plan, but just sort of make it harder to do that next quality session or something like that. So, yeah, I do that. I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I do that sort of thing sort of often. It'll be like, yeah, I have that same athlete I was mentioning. Oh, there's either do a CrossFit one or a run or something like that. And then based off what she's doing, yeah, it might change the other workouts the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, the CrossFit workouts themselves don't make sense to be doing. Does that make sense? Like, some of the ones are good
Yeah.
for someone who, but and it's hard because you don't know until the week before, and so I kind
Mhm.
of leave it open for her to pick which ones she thinks are most appropriate, but she's supposed to, like, tell me give me an idea of what she's doing. And it gives it, yeah, I love that flexibility, in the plan, and then there's that option to opt out, and there's another option if that, first thing doesn't work
Yeah.
out. So, and I think people like that. I personally do. I kind of do that in some ways for myself when I'm putting in, at least when I go in, and if it's like I'm not feeling it, like this next month or so, it's nice to be able to be like, I didn't really feel great today. I'm gonna see how I feel tomorrow, but if I need to run only 30 minutes instead of 45, I'm gonna only run 30 minutes because maybe
Yeah.
I'm just listening to my body and I don't feel like this pressure to get a certain mileage and or really any mileage at all because I'm just focusing on minutes based running right now for the
Yep.
most part. I'll have an idea of what my mileage is, but I'm just with the heat, I've decided I'm gonna do that. So yeah, it's just kind of having that flexibility even for myself. It's just nice. It's nice to be able to have something in there, but just know that I don't have to do it exactly as it's in there, and there's no pressure, you know?
Yeah.
There's a freedom, and I need that personally, and I think a lot of athletes do. Maybe not everyone, but I think a lot of people do kinda need having that structure and then having those periods of time where there's a little more freedom to maybe even listen to how they're feeling or adjust things as needed. But
Sometimes
yeah.
you can build that level of freedom within a structured plan as well. So,
Mm.
for instance, one way that I do that is, let's say I give an athlete a bike workout, and I can either give them the intervals that I want them to do. It's like, okay, we're doing four by 10 minutes or whatever. So out of that total duration, I know how much zone 3 work I want them doing, how much zone 4, how much zone 2. I know kind of the distribution. Then there are times where I just give the athletes, like, look, I want you to do this number of total minutes in this zone. And then I allow them the option to determine what those intervals are going to be. And
Hmm.
they'll say, okay, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to split this up based on how they're feeling. So if they're feeling good, maybe the intervals are a little bit longer. If they're not feeling all that good, then they shorten the intervals. We're still getting the same exposure on aggregate to a particular level of intensity, but I allow them the option to pick how they get there. I just want them to get to a particular point, but they choose the path and how it's structured. That doesn't work with everybody, but it
Yeah.
does. It is one way to approach it, to where you still have the coach guiding the athlete, but allow the athlete to kind of pick how they're going to structure it based on how they're feeling, because I don't know how the athlete feels at that particular moment. The intervals that I may have given them may not be appropriate for how they're feeling. They could have had a super stressful day at work, didn't sleep very well that night, and I programmed that workout 3 days before that. I had no idea. So it does allow for a
Yeah.
little bit more uh, dynamic movement within the plan,
Mhm.
and have it be
Yeah.
more appropriate, given where they are right then and there. So,
Yeah, I could see that, like, even in a structured plan having it's sometimes nice having a little bit of freedom or something to be able to have the athlete be able to adjust a little bit. It's just figuring that out for each individual athlete how much,
mhm,
some people may not like that and some people may really like that. And so it's just trying to kind of figure each individual person out and what works best. But yeah, I think that makes sense too. I'm trying to think if I with the running, if I mean, I would say sometimes I'll do like more like it's up to them, like in a fartlek type of situation where I'm like,
yeah,
"Okay, I
that's what I
want
was
you
about
to."
to say.
Yeah, I want you to kind of weave in and out a little bit of fast to easy, and they're kind of more up to the intervals in which they do it, might be power poles or some sort of other land-based marker or something, but it's like really sort of I just want you to move, get your heart rate up a little bit and move and go from, something a little more fast to easy, but it's not structured. And I think
Mhm.
those are fun because, again, the athlete kind of gets to decide. So that's probably the running example I would give for that, maybe. where it's something like sometimes I'll do like, okay, I want you to do some race pace stuff. You can either do it in the middle of the run or at the end. If you're doing like a run, like you can either do it where you warm up and you do that and then you kind of like cool down a little bit, or you can do it more of a progression run where you sort of do it easy and then that 20 minutes at tempo race pace is at the end. So there may be something similar where they can kind of decide in what point they want to do it. But yeah.
That might be a good approach. Like if you're not really actively training for a race, but you want to have some level of intensity within the plan that you are following or the structure
Mhm.
that you're executing now, that might be a great way to program your weekly sessions and say, look, these are the total number of minutes that I need to have some intensity, and then I can just pick and choose. But maybe when it comes time to like, okay, now we need that specificity, we need to focus because we're training for performance and there's a particular event that we want to work on. Maybe that's when you settle in. It's like, okay, now I want the intervals already programmed in. I just want to execute. I don't want to have to think about it. There's a time and place for it. So I don't want people to think that there's this binary decision that they have to make. It's like, okay, is there a plan or a no plan? I think that there is a way to weave these characteristics
Uh-huh.
together and
Right.
and
Yeah.
create no plan within a plan. I think that that's kind of the most descriptive way that I can that I can explain it
Or yeah, or
is
if
that
you're in between races and I think that you can still have some structure, something in there to kind of help you stay fit and get in some different, heart rate zones or something, but you don't maybe have it programmed into your watch, so it's very specific. It's kind of like, "Oh, I'm gonna, do this as you see fit." Like, "Okay, I'm gonna do
yeah
a longer interval or shorter or part," like, where I just kind of like I run, I have a specific place I go, and then on my way back home, it's on a paved road, and it's, power poles, and I don't even think those power poles are spaced quite evenly. Sometimes I'll do 2 power poles lengths at a time. Sometimes I'll just go from power pole to power pole, and I'll just kind of bring my pace up and just to try to get my legs moving a little faster, maybe, just almost like strides in a way within the run.
yeah
And then sometimes I'll do it a little longer. Um, yeah, I mean, that's something like that can be as simple as what we're talking about. It just like gaining that intensity, but it's not such a specific thing, but you're still doing something in the plan. So when we talk about things, it's like there's a lot of in between, a lot of like gray in between. There's no like black and white. It's not like you either have a plan or you don't have a plan. I mean, there are times where you maybe have a plan and times you don't have a plan, but for the most part, that's the no plan piece is pretty small amount of time set to only those specific things of like after race vacations and maybe holidays other than maybe specific life situations. So otherwise, I think you're on some sort of plan, whether it's a structured training plan or just like a outline of some sort of what you're
yeah
going to be doing. So I think that's kind of the gist of what we're talking about. Trying to think if there's anything I would add to what we've discussed. I feel like we've
yeah I think
covered it
we've
well. I don't know.
I think we've covered it pretty well. So we'll go ahead and we'll wrap this thing up. So I want to thank you guys for joining us in this episode of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. And this has been what I say, episode 108. I think is what the
Mhm.
episode was. So yeah, when to plan, when not to plan, or when to not plan within a plan. So there's all kinds of different ways to go about doing this. But we hope that this episode has helped you in your plans, or whether it's convinced you that, hey, maybe I don't need a plan right now and give myself a little bit of a break. But if this has resonated with you, uh, I hope that you will please consider leaving a comment and a review, or share the episode with somebody else. Those are greatly appreciated. We do not have sponsors. We do not have ads for this podcast because we wanted to come to you unconnected to anybody else. And so we're not trying to sell you anything. We just wanted to provide some information that we think is valuable to help you along in your journey. And leaving these comments and reviews is what helps expand the reach of the podcast, so other people can find us and we can move this thing forward. So we thank you guys for so much. If you've left a comment and review, thank you for it. If you haven't, we hope that you'll just consider just taking just a few seconds just to drop a comment and click on a star or two. So those are greatly appreciated. We also have the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group. It's a private group within Facebook. That is an area that we created from the first episode. It's a place where you can connect with other listeners. You can see some additional content from us. It allows us to have direct connection with our listeners. I know that we just created a poll that's in there. So we hope that you'll just go in, just look for it. It's the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group. You answer one simple question. It'll let you right on in. We were looking for some feedback on whether you guys have enjoyed our training specific episodes, where each one of us has come to you in solo episodes talking about, how our preparation for a particular event, and you followed us along on that journey. So please go, and if you've enjoyed those episodes, go to the group, click on your vote within the poll, and it'll let us know if we should continue doing those types of episodes going forward. Because not only are we coaches and podcast hosts, but we are athletes as well, and we love to train, we love to race. And if you find those episodes helpful, we'd like to share our journeys with you. Like I said, we are both active coaches. So if you are looking for someone to help you form a plan, or just take over control of your training, and all you have to then do is just execute and just move forward. You're tired of looking up workouts, you're tired of trying to come up with ChatGPT prompts to generate a training plan, and you look for somebody that has a little bit more experience and will tailor something to you in your life, we hope that you will consider one of us as your coaches. You can go to fuel2run.com if you'd like to reach out to Coach Katie. She does dietetics for all sports, as well as run-specific plans and run-specific coaching. If you're interested in multi-sport or single-sport training plans and one-on-one coaching, you can go to tabularossaracing.com, and you can reach out to me, Coach Justin. We're both happy to talk with you on how we can help you along in your journey. I know that both of our websites have a plethora of information. We have all kinds of other free resources, articles, video series that we've got out there to help you along and provide some information for you. So please take advantage of those resources and check them out, and then reach out to us if we can help you in any way. I can't think of anything else. So this has been episode 108 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I've been your host, Coach Justin, along with Coach Katie. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Bye. That wraps up today's episode of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Endurance sports have a way of teaching us patience, humility, and resilience, lessons that carry far beyond the workout. Progress in endurance sports doesn't come from shortcuts. It comes from consistency, discipline, and doing the work when it's not glamorous. Wherever you are on your endurance journey, keep trusting the process and honoring the work you put in each day. If today's episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone to help on their endurance journey. Don't forget to join the conversation on our social sites to help build and foster a community where we all learn and support one another. We'll be back with more stories and insights from Coach Justin and Katie. Until then, visit the podcast website at theenduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com for more episodes from the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Feel free to send us an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularossaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.